The story of Danny's life was a testament to past wounds. He lost his wife and 2 kids in a catastrophic explosion. His wife and daughter were found and given a proper burial, but his son's body was nowhere to be found. For a decade, every single week, he'd make a beeline for the police station, hoping for some shred of news about his missing son. But the answer he got was always the same: come back next week. Every time, without fail, he'd get on the bus to go home, but not before telling the driver he'd be back again the next day. This routine had the driver shaking his head in disbelief. He finally told Danny to just let it go, because his son was most likely gone for good. But Danny's determination was strong as an ox. He shook his head, admitting he could never move on until he could bury his son, who had a telltale red birthmark on the back of his neck. On a daily basis, Danny ran a small mini-mart, which also doubled as his home. That day, while he was minding the store, a customer started making a scene. Luckily, a tough-as-nails woman in red stepped in and handled it. Not long after, shortly after, 2 local police on patrol showed up, and they seemed to know Danny well. One of the police officers asked Danny to teach him kung fu because it turned out that, behind his calm demeanor, was a monster. He was a former Chinese Special Forces member and a kung fu expert. But their conversation sent Danny's mind drifting back to 10 years ago. He was showing off his brand new mini-mart, which even had a secret underground tunnel. His wife was giving him a used car as an anniversary gift. But suddenly, the sweet daydream was shattered when the mini-mart floor shook violently, as if a massive earthquake had just hit. Well, let's take a trip back in time to 1 hour before the incident. In a safe house, 2 foreign soldiers were keeping an eye on a woman who was a key witness, holding the secret to a major case. Meanwhile, outside the house, some local teenagers were getting on the nerves of the foreign soldiers, taunting and chasing them. Just when the soldiers were probably at their wits' end, a group of veiled troops suddenly stormed the safe house. In the tense atmosphere, one of the female soldiers tried to help a little girl who was scared out of her wits, while another guard, the male, was shot to death. The female guard saw a small girl crying and decided to help her, but eventually she was also killed. While the guards were putting up a good fight, the female witness they were supposed to protect had mysteriously disappeared. They didn't have time to look for her, because a fresh wave of the attackers was already breathing down their necks. After the brutal battle, the commander of the guards was taken to meet the gang's leader, a merciless and cruel mafia boss called Father by his lackeys. He was always accompanied by a mysterious woman named Bella. The foreign soldiers admitted that the person they were looking for had escaped. Not long after, Father's right-hand man, Stephen, handed him a cell phone with an incoming call from a government official. The official was mad as a hornet and gave them an earful for daring to attack a Chinese community. But Father just said that all he wanted was the woman who held his biggest secret. If he failed to get her, their entire operation would go down in flames. The official gave them an ultimatum. They had only 12 hours to find their target. Back at the mini-mart, all communications suddenly went dead. The tough-as-nails woman from earlier and a man came into the mini-mart to take shelter. Shortly after, a priest and a woman named Sheila came in, carrying an injured child. Danny acted deftly, using his expertise to remove a large clot of blood from the boy's stomach. Thanks to his quick actions, the kid regained consciousness, and everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Not long after, Father and his gang of villains showed up to surround the shop. The arrogant customer from before, who felt he hadn't done anything to deserve this, and 2 other customers decided to go out and surrender. But the villains just shot the 2 people dead, leaving the arrogant guy shaking in his boots. He only survived because Danny quickly pulled him back inside. The attackers were there for Sheila, who turned out to be the person Father was after all along. Father gave Danny 3 minutes to hand her over to him. Meanwhile, Sheila, who was previously scared out of her mind, was now ready to sacrifice herself and hand the chip she was carrying to Danny to save everyone else. But Danny stopped her cold and immediately closed the shop's rolling door. Since Danny was showing resistance, Father ordered his right-hand man, a guy with a steel bucket covering his head named Bruno, to go in and get Sheila by force. Inside the mini-mart, the others were livid with Danny's actions. One of them even pulled Sheila away, ready to throw her to the wolves. But the ruthless gangsters got to him first, finishing him off in a flash. After securing themselves, the arrogant customer started mouthing off, but Danny immediately shut him down. He made it clear that no matter what, they were all going to die at the hands of the villains. Danny then ordered Frank to get everyone to the shop's basement. Once they were ready, Danny quickly assembled a simple trap. The cover to the tunnel turned out to be a real pain in the neck to open, but with his expertise as a former Special Forces soldier, Danny opened the lid using his knowledge of science and engineering. At the same time, Bruno and his troops managed to bust into the minimart, but they didn't realize that Danny's trap was about to wipe them out in one go. Danny managed to get everyone into the underground tunnel, but because the exit door was rusted shut, Danny, Frank, and a homeless man named Cat with his kitten were forced to go back upstairs to grab some equipment. Danny used a smoke bomb to trick the gangsters outside, buying them some time while Frank and Cat grabbed the things they needed. But unexpectedly, Bruno was still alive and immediately came out swinging at Danny. When Danny was on the ropes, Cat suddenly appeared and helped him. Unfortunately, Cat ended up dead after Bruno attacked and threw him away. Not long after, the other villains entered, forcing Danny to face them all alone. Somehow, despite being outnumbered, Danny managed to end them all. And finally, Bruno, who was considered Father's strongest lackey, died tragically at the hands of Danny. When Bruno's body was found, Bella, who considered Bruno her own brother, broke down in tears. Father approached her and told her not to wallow in sadness. But Bella, who was filled with rage, was hell-bent on hunting down Danny all by herself. Father tried to talk her out of it, but Stephen immediately stepped up and volunteered to go. Since they only had 7 hours left on their deadline, Father knew he needed to keep Stephen focused. He ordered the other men to catch up with Bella to support her instead. Meanwhile, in the underground tunnel, Danny told the others to keep on moving while he stayed back to intercept the enemy and bought everyone some time to escape. He knew he was up against it, but he was willing to take the chance. After finishing off the lackeys, a fierce fight broke out between Bella and Danny. She was surprisingly a match for him, and Danny had to suffer some serious injuries, but he had more experience in this dog-eat-dog world. He eventually managed to turn things around and beat Bella using her own weapon. Feeling she had no chance to win, Bella pulled the pins on 2 grenades and blew up the tunnel. The blast knocked Danny unconscious. Then, in his subconscious, Danny found himself drifting back to the past, dreaming about the day his son gave him a watch that could be used as an alarm. The memory was a powerful reminder that he shouldn't give up because time was still ticking. Danny eventually woke up after hearing a sound coming from his watch. With his body covered in cuts and bruises, he got up and quickly followed his group. But he got a nasty surprise when he reached the exit. The iron door was locked up tight. On the other hand, Father received the report that the tunnel had collapsed and was absolutely furious. He then ordered Stephen and his troops to immediately go inside and hunt down Danny. The group of survivors was still trapped inside the dark, narrow tunnel. In the tense atmosphere, the priest knelt and prayed for the very people who had put them in this mess. It had the others wondering why he would pray for people who were so devoid of humanity. That's when the priest told them his story while serving in that city. He said the villains were once just young people who survived by scavenging for free bread at his church every week. But a few years later, they returned with their faces covered by veils and a weapon in their hands. They were no longer innocent beggars, but soldiers who had been recruited to kill. It turned out the leader of those church children was none other than Stephen. Bitter memories came crashing down on Danny once again. He dreamed of a time when his body was covered in wounds and his family was trapped in a burning car. He witnessed it all, but was powerless to help. He could only stare and feel a sense of dread as the fire devoured the people he loved. When he suddenly woke up from his nightmare, he found Sheila sitting beside him. It was there that Sheila finally revealed a huge secret. The chip in her hand contained the crime records of the villains, a mafia group that was considered the most dangerous in all of Southeast Asia. On top of that, the chip also contained a whopping $3 billion in electronic money. It was no wonder that Father was desperate to hunt her down. Sheila also admitted that she had been part of the criminal organization where all the members were orphans who had been trained to be killing machines. Because she was an expert with computers, she became part of the IT team and was given access to all the secret files. It was from there that she learned that the riot that had left them orphaned was actually planned by the organization itself. For 3 years, she prepared her escape with the chip. Now she wanted to hand it over to Danny because she was worried that she wouldn't survive. But Danny refused, saying he had only lived to look for his son. He insisted that Sheila had to make sure the chip reached the right hands. In the midst of their despair, a cold gust of wind blew, signaling there was a gap in the wall leading to the outside world. Frank immediately went looking for the source of the wind and found a fragile wall that could be broken through. Meanwhile, one of Father's men finally got his hands on a map of the secret tunnel. Without wasting a single moment, Stephen immediately directed his troops toward a door that was likely the way out. However, Father told some of his troops to stay behind and carry Bella's body out. By morning, Danny's group had managed to find an exit through the air vent of a tower. After being trapped in the darkness for so long, they finally got to breathe easy again. But their freedom was short-lived. Unexpectedly, a skilled sniper from the enemy side had been waiting at a distance. He shot half of them and immediately reported their location to Stephen. Danny quickly came up with a strategy, and a gunfight broke out. Thanks to Danny's accuracy, he managed to take out the sniper. Then he and the rest of the survivors, namely the priest Frank and Sheila, hurriedly got the hell out of there. Not long after, Father's troops arrived at the same spot, but Stephen found nothing. Father, clearly disappointed that Stephen failed to get their target, then promoted one of his men who had given the tunnel's map earlier, someone named Craig. At that moment, Stephen's gaze landed on an old warehouse not far away. Sure enough, that's where Danny and his team were hiding. Meanwhile, realizing the danger was brewing, Danny asked Frank to get the others away so that Sheila could still save the chip. Even though it was hard, they finally complied and left Danny alone to block the enemy's path. Not long after, Father's troops led by Craig arrived at the warehouse first. Craig, whose enthusiasm was at an all-time high after being promoted, led his troops to move in. But what they didn't realize was that trap after trap was ready to finish them off. Danny fought with everything he had, eliminating the villains in the warehouse one by one. After successfully seizing Craig's communication device, Danny lured Stephen by giving him a signal of his whereabouts. A few minutes later, Stephen and his men arrived at the location. They moved carefully, combing every corner of the warehouse, which was a bloody mess of their own fallen comrades. But even with their caution, they still couldn't escape Danny's trap. An explosion happened and wiped out Stephen's men, leaving it time for Danny to go one-on-one against Stephen. But in a moment of plot twist, it turned out that one of Stephen's men was still alive and managed to corner Danny. Luckily, Frank, Sheila, and the priest arrived just in the nick of time to save him. Just when Danny had managed to paralyze Stephen, his watch alarm rang in the middle of the silence, and that's when the biggest plot twist was revealed. Danny saw a red birthmark behind Stephen's ear, a perfect match to his son's. His body instantly went limp as he realized he was fighting his own flesh and blood. But Stephen, who had no idea, unexpectedly attacked him. Danny, who did not fight back, simply resigned himself to the knife stabbing into his stomach by the child he had been looking for 10 years. In this heartbreaking moment of reunion, Stephen finally realized that the man he had nearly killed was his own father. The tragic moment was ruined by the sudden arrival of Father, who plunged another knife into Danny's stomach. Coldly, he ordered Stephen to finish Danny off. But Stephen, who had always felt cheated because Father had spoiled Bella more than him, unexpectedly refused and turned on his own kind. After the incident, it was explained that Danny fell into a coma, while Frank chose to return to China to go back to his father's hometown. On the other hand, Stephen was sentenced to life imprisonment. At the very end of the film, we are shown Sheila meeting the priest at the airport. She handed over the chip, but suddenly the priest's expression changed. In a final bitter twist of fate, the pastor turned out to be a loyal henchman of the boss and had secretly taken the drive from Sheila. The film ends with Sheila's look of surprise, leaving an unanswered mystery for a potential sequel.